Hi everyone, I'm Thomas Wilson, music director of the Chamber Orchestra of the Springs, and we have a great concert coming up this weekend with 4 incredibly diverse pieces. We're going to be playing Mozart's 33rd Symphony, composed just after he returned to Salzburg from Paris. And it was a time where he was, believe it or not, doubting his skills quite a lot. So it's a very unusual symphony, tried out a lot of new things. We're also playing a piece called Bleue, a blues for orchestra. And this is a really great little piece by Trevor Weston. And it's not what you think. It's sort of the elements of the blues sort of floating through his memory. And it sort of comes into focus for a while. It's a brilliant application of the blues. But I'm here with our 2 soloists for this weekend. And I'm going to start with Mr. Gregory Walker, who is playing, if you can imagine, a piece composed by your father, a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer, George Walker. Tell us about this piece.
That's right. I'm playing the Poeme for violin and orchestra. That was definitely in the air in my household in the 1990s. Wasn't much of a way to escape it. I think the first victim of this piece was one of the better-known violinists from the state of Colorado, Eugene Fodor, who played a version of this coming out of the 90s. But as a result of that encounter, there were a series of revisions. And I think even as the maestro and I work over this week, we're going to see that the evolution of this piece is something that manifests itself in various versions, depending on what part or what score you have.
Oh boy.
So the surprises abound.
And so this is a very personal work. This is, he composed it he dedicated it to his mother, right?
That's right. He had a very close but complex relationship with his parents, and I think a number of his pieces from this period were dedicated to them. Interesting enough, it's abstract enough that there probably would not have been much of a way the parents, being non-musicians, could have ever fully understood it. But I believe that there was this inner drive, this fantasy that somehow his voice would be understood by his own parents. But no matter what, his kids figured it out, because I'm here in one piece, going to play this thing down.
It is a beast to play. It's incredibly difficult, but man, what an interesting piece. And we did one of his other pieces about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was fun because there was a note that said that he slipped a pop tune in there somewhere, and it was like, what is it? I think it was April in Paris. I even hear a little bit of T for 2 in this one, in the cadenza. It feels like a little T for 2.
That's exactly the kind of thing he would have done, and I think more for his own satisfaction than anybody else's. You'd have to be quite the expert to break down this piece just in front of you on paper and see what he had deconstructed there. But for him, these tunes were very significant and things that kind of inspired whole sections of his works.
Right, and after all these complex harmonies, all of a sudden about halfway through the final movement, you start to it's like dance, and we hear all these 7th chords, and it ends on that wonderful F-sharp 7 with the added 6. And it almost feels like a shadow of the big band here almost when you hear that chord. It's just so wonderful. But it's a great piece, and we're so excited to have you here playing it with us. So we're so excited. Thank you. And then also for all of the fans here in Colorado Springs of the Philharmonic, you know that whenever there's an oboe solo, you're in for something fantastic. Every time this young man plays, it is gold. And we brought him back. He's gone back to school for this year in New York City, and so we have flown him back to play the Vaughan Williams Oboe Concerto, a piece I just adore. Is this your first time playing the piece?
This is my first time playing the piece with orchestra, for sure. I think the last time I actually ever played the piece was my freshman jury at Eastman. But it's a piece it's one of our best concertos in our entire repertoire, and it's just full of soaring melodies and just pastoral tunes. It's just a beautiful piece, and it's written so idiomatically for the oboe. It uses a whole instrument, and it's just really contains all the material that an oboe player would want to be able to play. I'm thrilled to be able to be here and see so many familiar faces and join the group.
Right, excellent. Well, we're so lucky for that. And this is Vaughan Williams in his World War II period. And much like Aaron Copland, he decided consciously to compose pieces that would lift people's spirits in a very difficult time. We just played, several years ago, the chamber orchestra played the Fifth Symphony of Vaughan Williams, which is devastating. It's so beautiful. And his Second Symphony, of course, is an homage to London. He actually titled it the London Symphony. And then the Fifth Symphony, he starts it almost exactly the same. And so anyone of any taste in London would have known immediately, this is another London Symphony. And you hear it all. You hear all the activity on the streets and everything, and it's so incredibly beautiful. And he's dreaming, this was probably 1942, if I'm not mistaken, and he's just dreaming of the end of the war. And so you hear the train motive at the end, at the beginning, and you just know for them this means so many people have to leave London. And then at the very end, the train motive comes back. This is everybody returning home. It's so glorious. It is just one of the most amazing pieces. And there is material in the oboe concerto that he had composed for the symphony. And he said, well, it doesn't quite connect with the ideas exactly, so he just set it aside. It happens all the time. Copland called it his golden nuggets, and he just piled them up on the piano, and then maybe try to make one work, and nope, and toss it away, and then finally you find the opportunity. And so you hear this connection with the Fifth Symphony as well. So you're actually sort of closing a circle there for us. It's kind of exciting, but all these beautiful, soulful English melodies, oftentimes in the old modes as well. And some paraphrases of them, the big 3-2 chorale at the end. It's sort of Last Rose of Summer, right? I mean, it's close. And I don't know if it's maybe there's another tune that's super close or if he's just paraphrasing, but it certainly feels like it. And so there's you playing all these soulful things in just an incredibly soulful way. It's amazing. We just had a rehearsal with Noah, so we're really excited. And then tell me a little bit, that last movement is just a bear. All those really fast sevenths and just jumping all over, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, it is really difficult. Requires a lot of discipline. But really, it's honestly not too different from the rest of the piece in that overall there's a lot of simplicity in it because he uses similar modes, and so like you have a sort of a chunk of music that's in one mode and then another chunk that's in a different mode. So once you sort of recognize those patterns, you can just sort of go with the flow at that point. And then after you get done playing all of the fast stuff and the noodles, so to speak, he intersperses beautiful, long flowing melodies, which I think are challenging in themselves just because you're getting to the end of the piece and it's a question of stamina. And you want to be able to, produce as beautiful a sound as you possibly can. And
after you've been at sea level.
And I've been at sea level for a little while, so it's interesting coming back up to altitude for sure. Both for, oxygen reasons and oboe reed reasons.
Oh yes, the reeds, they are always temperamental.
I won't go on about it.
You look at a reed wrong and it won't play all of a sudden. It's really frustrating, but well, we're so glad to have you back.
It's great to be here, thank you.
So this weekend, 4 incredibly diverse pieces, all find their composers in a state of introspection and really looking at their lives and really thinking about where they are in the world and what they want to say with their music. So it's really special music, and you couldn't get 4 more diverse pieces than we're playing this weekend. So come join us, and thank you.